In this video, we will be discussing the Fimir, more specifically their lore and army units. Now, a quick PR statement: little is known about the Fimir as they were only briefly included in the tabletop game in the 3rd edition of Warhammer. For that reason, I am pulling what little information was taken from that edition and adding some flavor through the more recent fan-made army book, which I believe if Games Workshop was going to keep fantasy going, it will look similar to what the community has put together. And with that said, let's get into the Fimir. The Fimir are amphibious humanoid monsters, rumored to be part human and part demon. The Fimir haunt bogs, fens, and desolate moorlands. Their strongholds are forbidding, craggy piles of rock, crudely built in the semblance of a human castle, and constantly wreathed in mist. The weird mist is generated by the Fimir themselves in order to screen them from the sunlight which they loathe. Any Fimir warband ranging far from its lair will be shrouded in such an enchanted mist. The fearful Femme raiders are the scourge of human settlements along the coasts or the fenland margins. They come forth seeking human captives for whom a foul and hideous fate awaits and disappear back into the marshlands. Fimir are cyclopean in nature, meaning they have one large eye as opposed to two. The males are heavily muscled with roughly the size of an ogre with incredible strength. Fimir are seen wearing armor that protrudes from their back, as well as a thick stout tail that ends in either a club or spikes. The Fimir also speak their own language known as Famar, which is similar to that of the Dark Tongue, but of a more ancient and demonic dialect. It is not uncommon for Fimir mages to bind demons into their warriors to enhance their combat capabilities, as well as summon demons as familiars to protect the caster should their warriors fail to do so. They worship the Chaos Gods devoutly, and regularly make blood offerings in their name. It is unknown if they favor a particular god, but it is more likely that they worship them all in the same manner of the Beastmen and other dedicated worshippers of the ruinous powers. The Fimir make their homes in bogs, marshes, and swamps of mostly the Old World, but they can be found in the Chaos Wastes, and particularly on an island named Albion off the coast of the northwestern part of the Old World. Long before the rise of man, the Fimir worshipped the Chaos Gods, and for a time enjoyed their favor. Alas, the eyes of the gods were swiftly drawn to the more vibrant and amusing races of man, and the Fimir were abandoned, reduced to seeking boons from bound demons where once they had enjoyed the blessings of the gods. Nowadays, the Fimir are a dwindling and reclusive race, rarely leaving their swampy homelands, save for the occasional raid for food and slaves. Only the Fimir sorcerers, known as Dirak, or sometimes as Bale Fiends, spend prolonged periods in the lands beyond the mists. Such creatures have but one goal: to destabilize the barrier between the mortal world and the realms of chaos, thus aiding the Chaos Gods to their ultimate victory, and so regaining the favor they once lost. Few wizards possess the means to call forth the Fimir from their places of hiding, for these creatures swore ancient oaths of service to the demons of chaos, which were committed to binding scrolls of flayed skin in the blood of races long since extinct, and fewer still dare to use them. Those that possess this dark knowledge, though, can summon forth black armored warbands of the Fimir to walk the old world once more, leaving nothing but death and destruction in their wake. The Fimir are mentioned as being one of the first followers of chaos, which puts them nearly as old as the dragon ogres and dragons themselves, which have been around since before the arrival of the old ones, which created most of the races that populate the Warhammer world. I believe the Fimir are slightly younger than the dragon ogres, because they seem to have a close tie to mankind, and have a hatred for them almost equal to that of the Beastmen, but for different reasons, being primarily a hatred born from jealousy that the Dark Gods chose mankind over them as their new champions. For this reason, Fimir seem to go out of their way to be particularly cruel towards humans. Though they are still children of chaos, well, stepchildren for now, they do heed the call to arms and will join a chaos warband, even led by human champions if the gods have willed it. Before we get into their army roster, I want to touch on Fimir society. Fimir tend to form clans or warbands and tend to stay within a certain territory separate from one another. Fimir have a caste system in place that determines your value and vocation in society, very similar to the Beastmen once again. At the top of the caste you have the Mirg, or witch hags, the Dirak, or Bale Fiends, then the Femme nobles, which encompass warlords, which lead the Femme into battle, and the lesser Femme, Fimors, who act as captains. Next are the Femme, elite Femme warriors, then the standard Femme warriors, and finally the Shirl, who act as essentially slaves. Now on to the army roster. We will start off at the top of the social ladder and work our way down. The Mirg, or witch hags, are revered female Fimir who rule the Fimir clans. In fact, they are the only female Femme. Fimir clans have never more than a single Mirg, who are always present if the Fimir are defending their stronghold. Female Femme children are extremely rare, and those that are born are usually killed to prevent a rival to the Mirg supremacy from rising. Should another Mirg be born into a clan, an event that occurs once every 100 years or so, the old Mirg must either die or kill the newborn female. But if a Mirg is growing elderly, she may tolerate a single female child to be raised as a successor. If a Mirg dies without a successor, the clan will split, with Fimir warlords taking their own retinues to join other clans or go alone. Femme without a Mirg, even Balefings, do not survive alone. When a Mirg successor comes of age, she may choose to pledge allegiance to her mother, in which case she remains in an advisory role until the death of the Mirg. Or she may take a detachment from the settlement to form an offshoot clan elsewhere. In some cases, the clan is split asunder, as each Mirg seeks to found a new clan, taking a portion of the old clan with her. The witch hags are the unchallenged leaders of Fimir clans, and even the mighty bellows of Femme nobles are softened to mere whispers when directed to the Mirg of even a rival clan. No true-blood Femme would willingly allow physical harm to ever come to any Mirg, and would gladly sacrifice their lives to protect her. This is the only time one will ever witness the concept of sacrifice from a Fimir. Witch hags are usually shorter and skinnier than the other castes. Unlike male Fimir, they have hair, usually lank and greasy, dark green or blue-black in color. They usually have horns, though these are smaller than those of the Dirak. Witch hags are known to be powerful sorcerers, seeming to shape the very winds of magic themselves to deliver devastating spells upon their enemies. On to the Dirak, or Balefings. They are most frequently seen among Fimir raiding parties. Their spellcasting secondly only to the Mirgs among the Fimir. They shape the very weather of the marshes to aid their foul cause. Even among the Femme, they are regarded with fear. As strong as they are powerful in magic, they tower above their smaller cousins and regard the human tribesmen with disdain. Dirak occupy high positions in the clan, advising and assisting the Mirg. One or more Dirak may be assigned the responsibility of watching over the spiritual well-being of the clan, by offering appropriate sacrifices and divining by the 5 traditional lores of stars, moon, water, blood, and rock. This task is usually carried out with the assistance of a coven of Drui. Not all Dirak belong to such a coven. Many are occupied in the day-to-day running of the clan, spending much of their lives in close consultation with the Mirg, often in prolonged trances. When large raiding parties go into the outside world, it is usual for them to be accompanied by a Dirak. Not only does this assure the raiders of strong magical support, but the presence of these beings is usually enough to keep the devious Femme in line. The Balefiends have somewhat narrow heads than the other castes and have 2 or more horns growing from the sides or tops of their head. These are sometimes carved into ornate shapes. A Balefiend's sorceries seem crude and ritualistic compared to the magic of the elves or even men, but they are no less potent, for they are woven with the power stolen from demons. A Balefiend's cyclopean eye is said to see the ebb and flow of the winds of magic, in the same way a man's perceives light and shade, which allows them to make the best use of whatever magical power is available. Now we move on to the Femme nobles and warlords. The largest and strongest Fimir are the Femme warlords. Huge, powerful, and utterly evil, they often lead the strongholds' armies against their foes. Femme warlords are almost unstoppable in combat and seek to utterly crush their opponents. The lesser Femme leaders each control an aspect of the stronghold and act as captains in its armies. These powerful Fimir often have bladed tails and are skilled warriors. In smaller skirmishes, they will often lead the Femme warbands against the enemy. The Femme warlord is the overall battlefield commander of the whole Fimir force, but in reality he answers to the witch hag in victory or in defeat. The Femme nobles often wear helmets, sometimes with horns. This infuriates many Balefiends who see it as an infringement of the caste differences, or even an outright mockery of their own horns. The Femme warlords, especially those of Albion, also wear long cloaks, fastened at the shoulders with gold brooches set with gems. These are often garnets since they are the color of human blood. Femme tend to use heavy axes or maces when fighting, but Femme warlords often go into combat with one in each hand. Now we touch on the Fianna Femme, which are the elites of the Femme warriors, handpicked, sometimes at birth, sometimes as a result of some great deed, but most frequently by displaying prowess at the Hakashikak, an annual contest held to commemorate the breaking of the Crystal of Kulang. Fianna are removed from their ancestral sept and form a separate group, which serves as bodyguards to the clans Dirac or Mirg. Normally, Fianna will only leave the fortress if their clan is threatened, but they are sometimes sent abroad to accompany a Balefiend on a mission of importance, or as support for Femme on a particular difficult raid. The Fianna are normally marked out by their ceremonial armor, more of ornamentation than protection, since the Fimir shun such signs of weakness. Places in the ranks of the Fianna Femme are often awarded on the outcome of a duel or contest. Many of the Fianna continue to bear the Hakashaki, or trial sword, with which they won their station, as their main weapon in combat. These long, curved blades have a ferocious reputation for being able to cleave stone, bone, and the thickest armor. Unlike most Fimir, the Fianna use a two-handed blade with deadly skill. Other than weapon choice, they are simply bigger, badder Femme warriors. There are two further more subclasses of Fianna, being the Flaithmore, essentially a noble Fianna who often leads the warriors, and the Mistmore, which are much larger than the average Fimir. They are roughly the size of trolls. They are used as guardians of the Femme settlements and are in fact the builders, as no other Fimir possesses the strength to stack the heavy stone that the Fimir use for their structures. Now on to the Femme warriors, or simply the Femme as they are known. The Femme warriors are regarded as the normal pattern of Fimir. Their form is said to be unchanged from the earliest days of the race, and the majority born are of this caste. Within the Femme there is a hierarchy, with ascension through the ranks usually gained by brute strength, cunning, deception, or backstabbing. Those at the bottom, the warrior class, band together in groups known as septs, often drawn along lines of common parentage. Septs are governed by a Flaithmore, and are grouped together in clans ruled by a Mirg. It is the Femme who make the most frequent raids, the Femme who oversee the Charl and human slaves, and the Femme who propagate the species. Without the feudal core of Femme society, the race would be long extinct. Fimir warriors are led by Fin Fian, and are organized into the service of a specific noble. Possibly all of a noble's retinue may have been fathered by himself, or they may have elected to join him after he beat a rival in combat or by subterfuge. It is possible, if unlikely, for a Femme warrior to rise to a position of noble, at which point the warrior's clubbed tail begins to sprout horns as part of a hormonal process. In the Femme warriors we get a glimpse at the Fimir structure for forming companies of troops, or septs as they refer to them. More interesting of all is the idea of moving up in this caste system from warrior to noble, where their body undergoes a physical change, and their tail goes from a club to a spiked flail. Last of the Femme units are the Charl. Charl are the lowest caste in Fimir society. They are smaller in stature than the warrior caste, and generally perish within the sundering of the clan. Even though the Charl are true blood Fimir, they are primarily servants and laborers rather than skilled warriors. They are the weakest and most numerous of the Fimir. Cowardly and weak, they are looked down upon by their brethren. Typical employment for the Charl is in the form of household staff and retainers, cooks, cleaners, porters, for example. But some are skilled craftsmen, and almost all weaponry, armor, jewelry, clothing, and utensils possessed by the Fimir are skillfully forged in their workshops. This is about the only way a Charl can ever find himself of value to those of higher caste, so apprenticeships are much sought after, and only the most naturally talented are permitted to become craftsmen, ensuring only the highest quality. These artisans are also the only Charl permitted to reproduce, and so the positions are highly coveted. The bulk of every Fimir army and raiding party is made up of lesser caste mutant half-breeds and slaves pressed into service. Their purpose is to soak up enemy ammunition and take the charges of enemy cavalry. They have little, if any, chance of survival, and only count on weight of numbers to absorb casualties before being crushed underfoot by the monsters in front or behind. The life of an Albion slave is as short, unpleasant, and unrewarding as they get. We have Albion mentioned one more time, just shows you how closely tied the Femme are to it. And we can also tell from these passages that the Shal are essentially a slave class, and they're roughly the size of a human, but it appears that the Shal are the most important piece of the Femme puzzle, as they keep the society together, which has led to the Fimir using half-breeds and other slaves as their cannon fodder in battle, as the true Femme Shal are too valuable to waste. And with that, we close out the Femme army and units. As far as Total War is concerned, we will be seeing the Femme Belfiend as a sorcerer hero, and we will also be seeing the Femme Warriors, and possibly the Fianna Femme, but I believe they'll be going under the name of just Elite Femme Warriors, and they look to be a great addition to the Norscan roster. I don't have much hopes of seeing the Shal or even the Myrg, the Witch Hags, in the Total War video game, anytime soon at least. It would be a great addition for them to have it, but they will be staying in the Norscan roster. The Norskans already have units that fulfill those roles. And so, sadly, I don't foresee us ever getting a Fimir standalone race, but one can always hope. There is one more attribute of Fimir society I would like to cover, mainly how Fimir propagate their species. It is well known that the Fimir are fanatical in their dedication to the Chaos Gods and regularly make blood offerings to the Dark Gods, hence the need to capture slaves. But this is not the only reason they do. It is actually understood that the Fimir, much like the Beastmen, despite having female members of the society, actually rely on capturing female slaves to propagate their species. It is not clear if eggs are laid or if an infant Fimir is born from this process. And with that rather disturbing revelation, that concludes my lore video on the Fimir. I have been Jumbo Thick. Make sure to like and subscribe for future content. I will be making more lore videos and hope to see you in the next one, guys. Have a good day.